Pashaparo, YNet7, thank you for tuning the replay. So today we're doing a little Q&A from the comments. And we had a great question the other day by AMF. And it started off under the intro video. So if you hadn't seen that already, go ahead and check that out. Get caught up. And the comment first initial was, calm is the cradle of power. Because in there we reviewed power versus force. And I responded, totally agree, which is why so many disciplines promote being relaxed during execution for best results. Stay connected with peace and enjoy. So the amazing question asked, and by all means, I invite questions because I like to learn. And when I get asked a question, if it's something I haven't seriously given thought about, it promotes me the opportunity to add that value to my life and maybe those around me. So by all means, if you have a question, please ask. And we know what assumption does to people. So the question was, so how does one be the water instead of the forced dam? And again, you got to watch that video to understand exactly why this question makes sense at this time. But if you're coming into it firsthand, by all means, hang on. I'm going to break it all the way down to you and show you how truly connected with the universe you are if you allow yourself to be. And that may be what separates you from somebody else sometimes when you're feeling a disconnect. And it's not always a matter of who's right and who's wrong. Because what if there is no right and there is no wrong? What if there's just pure and not? See? So the question is, so how does one be the water instead of the forced dam? How can one find that space when so many people are literally effing trying to push every button? And, I said, great question. Shall the response be best served in a video? Because the reason I make these videos is because I got several that all combine to one goal. But a good reason why I make these videos is because it allows me to give it my full attention once and answer that precisely, in depth, and if you want to say perfectly or whatever your description is, let's say whole, and then I can just refer you all to the video whenever this comes up in my life, because I know a lot of you are to the point where what you're good at, you probably are to the point where you're tired of saying the same thing over and over again, and or sometimes in life's busy situations of the day-to-day of being an adult or being whoever you are, or being young at heart and old in the mind, what have you, you don't get the full chance to have the complete thought translated. People ask questions in the middle of the conversation. You get this deviated from getting through all the talking points, all kinds of stuff. So by making these videos, I can fully concentrate on the success, deliver the value, and have it for your convenience at your leisure. So I took my time and I thought about this. This question was like a day ago, so I'm known that if you ask me something I don't know, I'm not gonna. It's not that I didn't know it. I wanted to give the perfect answer so that if this video is seen by the next generation or 100 years from now, they dig up a buried city and find a working internet connection from some ancient primitive civilization known as us, that this message may come across to them, maybe as the Bible do to some of y'all today. So I have a habit of condensing things because to me, when you reduce an equation, that's called simplifying. And that's normally a translation for the answer. So the question she asked, I'll review it one more time, is so how does one be the water instead of the forced dam? How can one find that space when so many people are literally effing trying to push every button? And my one word answer, and I'll elaborate in this video, is to distill. The word distill, as you see probably before 1378, is to produce. In essence, by condensation, given off in drops, trickle down in a minute, etc., etc., etc. Produce. You see, we got to start with the GOAT if we're going to do this, right? So first of all, how is this water thing even relevant? And to me, I have no choice but to start with Bruce Lee.
This is what it is, okay? I said, empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
So when we go back to distill, you'll notice that there's really two words involved there. Hold on a second here. So there's two words involved there, right? Dis and still. So the dis, as you see in this definition here, relates to apart, is how they're putting it here, right? Now, apart means like not, right? We can reduce the part to being not. Not, it's apart. So it's not of, it's apart. And then drip, drop, drop. It's all like motion description, right? We could agree to that. So if that's the case, then this, meaning not, and if we're looking at action, then we're saying still. The opposite of action is still, right? So this still is like saying not still. Not in the sense of what the still or comes from, but just not still. Because it's either dripping, dropping, it's moving. It's motion. So when you look at water at its purest form, it's hydrogen and oxygen. H2O. And what it's done is it's formed bonds. It's made connections, right? So the first thing it had to do was make connections within itself to become the water. You see what I'm saying? So you got to connect with yourself first to become the water, and that's step one that a lot of people miss. They're too busy connecting with the TV, with the radio, with the iPad, like we did in the conversations before when they were talking about the youth being connected to the iPads and stuff. If the parents don't get them off it, they're too busy connected to fashion. They're too busy connected to sports. They're too busy connected to everything but themselves, because everything else makes them feel better than. And when I say them, I'm talking about whoever, the many people that are in this fog and don't realize they're there. And then when you get a question like this, what I feel in this question is that this is a person that has this perspective. And this video is for everybody, because if you're the people like this, like me, because this is my view, and this is how this question resonates with me, then you're gonna look at it from that perspective. If you're on the opposite end of the coin, then you're gonna see an opportunity to see that it's not that you're not understood or people like me look down upon you, or feel some type of way upon you. Like when it says, how can one find that space when so many people are literally effing trying to push every button? You guys probably feel like this sometimes too. Everybody does, I'm sure, at least once in their life. So what's happening is this really happens to you more often than you think, probably, and you're just not connected with yourself. Remember, we were talking about go within yourself first. You got to connect with yourself. You probably just aren't connected with yourself enough to realize that you don't like the shit. And because you've pacified yourself and or allowed the environment and society to pacify you, you become comfortable and complacent. You become still. You become stagnant. And then you begin to judge the people who want to remain active, who want to remain water. Because water flows. Water moves. So once you connect with yourself, right, here's what happens. You form this molecule of water. And then once you become water, you can connect with other water. And like attracts like, so you can usually connect with water of the same type. And you know how water forms great molecular bond strength when it's connected. You know, it's got that great surface tension that you can take advantage of in many different ways. Surface tension. So what does water form? Well, if we're going to talk about the distilling process real quick, this is how it looks in nature. Collection, which is when you join a club. If you're type or kind is abundant enough to have enough numbers to be a club, then you get some energy added to that. You agitate it, you heat it up, you excite it, and it ascends. It becomes full of energy, and that's known as evaporation when it changes into a gas. And then it collects again. It joins a club at a different level. And that's called condensation. And once it falls, or if it falls out of that level, it's known as precipitation. And it's back to the groundwater collection, and that's the cycle. And you have variations of like ice and stuff like that in the mix too. And there's your three states. And there's a plasma, which you probably would know as the sun. If you recall, the sun does have hydrogen and oxygen in it, and it's kind of in a plasma type state. And there's scientific studies shown that if you hit water with a certain frequency, it'll actually start to form a ball in a controlled pool, a ball of light that's radiating heat and light. So I'm not saying that's what the sun is. I'm just saying they've done these studies, and you can look that up on YouTube. So what does the water form? Well, you've got rivers, streams, oceans, lakes, and ponds. And I know that sounds so kindergartenish, but I put this slide on here, or this image, to showcase one thing. A lake, a river is moving. A stream is moving. The ocean is distilled. It's not still in that sense. Not in the sense of the scientific process. We're going to get there in a moment. Hold on. But as far as moving, being alive, right? The ocean is alive. The lake is alive. It moves. It has tides. However, a pond does not move. And if you notice, the ponds are the versions of the water naturally that represent stagnation, that represents complacency. Now notice, whatever it was, whether it's an ocean, a lake, a stream, a river, a pond, the water fills up the whole space and remains level. That's what we call balanced, right? We're not going to get into the flat earth, round earth thing, but it's flat. And it takes the shape and the form of its environment. It becomes the teapot. However, the pond represents stagnation. And that's why you see the growth on the water in the ponds, because it's still, it's dead, like the ground. So much, in fact, that plants have taken root and grown on its surface, just like the dirt. And this is why if you leave a cup of water in your house for too long, you're not going to want to drink that in 2 weeks. Distill, to produce. Condensation, given off in drops. Basically, we reduce that to not still. So you heat the water up, right? Heat the pond water up, the river water up. What happens? You get steam. And you know what that does? If the pond represents a form of pollution, the other waters can be polluted too. So you can take what was originally pure water, hydrogen, oxygen, and you can add other stuff to it. And that's what we call pollution. It's called toxicity. Give me a second. I have something else to show you. Okay. So here I'm going to show you that for example, you got salt water and you got fresh water, but they don't mix. Right? Hold on, I'll rewind it for you. I don't know if you caught that beginning. So in this simple experiment, it shows, although there's some quote unquote, you could say it's mixing in the middle, it didn't mix though. You know what I'm saying? Like they didn't mix. Like that's not Kool-Aid. You know what I mean? So what happens is like attracts like. So what kind of water are you? Let's go back to her question here, because this is really amazing if you really know what it's asking. So in the beginning, she asked, how does one be the water instead of the forced dam? Well, as we just saw, you have different types of water. You got ponds, lakes, they don't mix. When the river flows into the ocean, it takes a long time for that water to dissolve into each other, if it ever does at all. We don't know. Maybe this is what's going on underneath the ocean. Like, I don't know how many of y'all have seen the pools of different, they say it's just a different salinity, but there's rivers and lakes in the ocean, like under the surface, and the waters don't mix with each other. It's crazy. It's amazing what happens when you take a couple of minutes and just ask yourself a question and go look for the answer. Now, what you need to understand is you don't have to become water. It's not a question of how does one be the water. You already are. You already are. You're 70% water. I mean, don't quote me on the exact percentage, but you get the drift of what I'm saying. You're already water. You just got to understand what responsibility that forces that places upon you. See, so if it's saying what does water do for you, and I'm not saying this is all it does, so by all means, if you got some additional features of water, go ahead and throw that in the comments below. But it's saying it forms saliva, which you need for your digestion. You know, mucosal membranes moist, allows body cells to grow and reproduce and survive, right? Flushes the body of waste, mainly in urine, lubricates your joints. Water is the major component of most body parts, needed by the brain to manufacture hormones and neurotransmitters. Regulates body temperature, sweating, and respiration. Acts as a shock absorber for the brain and spinal cord. Converts food to components needed for survival, digestion. Helps deliver oxygen all over the body. So if your waters are not pure and they're polluted, what effect does that have on you as a whole? And I don't just mean that in the sense of the water you drink. I mean that in the sense of you are water. You have to first form the connection with yourself to identify what water you are, so that you seek out the other water like you because like attracts like, you will repel the water, any water that you think that you're not, right? And this is what happens: separation, division, divided and conquered based on perception. It really is a weakness to not connect with yourself. So you heat up, you get excited, and you boil, and you create steam. And any pollution, right, at that point, in most cases, I mean, I'm not going to say it's a perfect world, but when you boil water, the pollution or the impurities, the imperfections, the anything other than the water is what gets left behind if you were to boil off and evaporate all the water out the pot. See, a lot of y'all may have put water from the sink in the pot before and boiled it, and you wonder what that film is at the bottom of the pot. That's all the stuff. That's not even all of it, because you didn't boil down all the water. You probably just making some tea or something, right? Well, that layer, and if you boiled it all the way down, if you want to try this one day and just boil water, a pot of water, it don't have to be a whole pot. You don't have to waste a whole, humidify your atmosphere, but you don't got to do it all. Put a little water in there and boil it down. And you'll see a layer left behind after all the water is gone. That's all the impurities that was in that water. So what happens is the steam is now purified water. Naturally. Not the way they say it on the bottle. I did a video on that. It's you got to understand the difference between organic and non-organic, and those minerals. They taught us in school that water doesn't have a taste, a color, or an aroma. So why are you cracking bottles of water talking about how good this tastes? Or you like this bottle water better than that bottle of water because it tastes better. What you're tasting is the inorganic minerals in it that your body can't process. So it winds up either passing right through you, which is why you go to the bathroom so fast, or your body deposits those inorganic elements in places like your joints, and you get what's known as arthritis. In places like your muscles, and you get rheumatoid arthritis. Or maybe it winds up in your brain. I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice. And you wind up with Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, or dementia because it's depositing inorganic minerals that the body can't break down in your brain and start short-circuiting your nervous system because it can't send the signals through inorganic matter. I don't know, I'm just for your entertainment purposes. So what happens if you could then capture that steam? Now you have the distillation process. And you wind up with a way to remove the impurities of the water and be left with pure water. So you can start with something like this. I mean, it's maybe an over exaggeration, but you get the message. And you can put it through its natural process, even in your own controlled environment, and produce pure water. Now, also consider this. On a molecular level, the reason it's called distilled is because on a molecular level, pure water is its most active state, because when you have impurities mixed into the water, you are taking up space in that same volume that water, those atoms can't move around as much. Like if this was what they would be doing, and this is the water, and this microphone is, inorganic calcium, then they can't move as much. So they're slowed down, they're contained, they're restricted, and the more you pollute the water, the more you slow its activity down. And that's what's happening in a lot of people's lives. You have goals, you have dreams, but because you're focused on the walls that you feel contain you, you forget the flow. You forget to move in the space that you have. You forget to make the most of the environment and the opportunity. You absorb the pollution and you slow yourself down from what you really are supposed to be, which is alive. You become the pond instead of all other opportunities. Now, there's one more element to this I want to point out, and whether you're religious or scientific, I'm not here to speak on, and many of us feel like we have some sort of connection with the universe or with something greater than us. And I'm going to show you how the purification factor of your water, so to speak, in metaphoric and literal terms, controls your reception capabilities. All right, let's take a look at that. I know. Give me a second. I'm working this out. This is live. I'll be doing these videos live. This ain't like pre-recorded. So all these videos you see, they're done live. Like I'm doing all this right as I'm talking. So here we go. So this is from SETI Observations, right? SETI Institute. And I'm going to need to read a couple paragraphs here, and then all of this will be connected. And I hope I blow your mind right now, because this could answer your questions about a lot of people, no matter what side of the coin you're on. All right. So the question, are we alone? And, don't worry about this part. What I'm getting at is down there, because we're talking about water, but I got to build you up to it. So the question is, are we alone in the universe, has fascinated people for centuries. In 1959, two Cornell University physicists, described how we might answer that question through interstellar communication. Philip Morrison and that guy analyzed, because I don't know how you say this, analyzed how two civilizations separated by many light years of space might use electromagnetic radiation to communicate. Now, remember we talk about everything's a frequency. All right, we'll say that for another time. So electromagnetic radiation is a general term for the more familiar light and radio waves, but also includes gamma rays, X-rays, ultraviolet rays, and infrared. And for those super in-depth people, you probably realize that this includes gravity as well, but they're all on the same spectrum. Anyway, here we go. Light, sound, gravity, ultraviolet, gamma rays. They're all emitted. They're all emitted. Like, they taught us that gravity was a pulling force, right? In reality, it's a pushing force, just like light is pushed out and doesn't come back unless reflected. Sound comes out and doesn't come back unless reflected. This is the same spectrum that gravity is. Anyway, here we go. So all of these forms of electromagnetic rays or waves travel at the speed of light, the fastest possible speed, quote unquote, until we find something faster, right? You know how it is. So the only difference between these types of electromagnetic waves is the length or the wave or the wavelength. Since the waves, we're talking about water, right? Since the waves all travel at the speed of light, another way to characterize the wave is by the number of waves received per second. This is the frequency of the wave. Okay, so we almost to the point here. Morrison and Coco considered how well the types of electromagnetic waves pass through interstellar space. While space is usually described as a vacuum, it does contain some gas and dust. Over great distances, that gas and dust absorb many types of radiation, but radio waves pass through nearly unimpeded. For interstellar communication, a particular range of radio frequencies, microwaves from 1 gigahertz to 10 gigahertz, are particularly good choices. At lower frequencies, our galaxy emits prodigious amounts of radio waves, creating a loud background of noise. Now think about that, right? When you're talking about for those conscious people, right? You know, for the conscious community that's talking about, the low vibration, you know what I'm saying? I'm high vibration. And, they're trying to break it down to you like that. It's simply put right here. It's the same thing as saying at lower frequencies, our galaxy emits amounts of radio waves, creating loud background noise. What that would be is interference, right? What that would be is pollution. Okay, let's get back to it. So, at higher frequencies, the Earth's atmosphere, and presumably the atmosphere of other Earth-like planets, absorbs and emits broad ranges of radio frequencies. The result is a quiet microwave window through which efficient radio communication is possible. This is why these are your antenna. Okay, hold on. Here we go. Here's what ties it all together for you. And it gives you this little illustration. So, the microwave window has another interesting feature to recommend it as a place for interstellar communication. The quote-unquote waterhole. It says some atoms and molecules in space emit radio waves at particular frequencies. Hydrogen atoms emit at 1,420 megahertz, a wavelength of 21 centimeters. Hydroxyl molecules composed of one atom of hydrogen and one atom of oxygen emit at 4 specific radio waves frequencies ranging from 1612 megahertz to 1720 megahertz. When a hydrogen atom combines with an hydroxyl molecule, it forms a molecule of water. the most essential molecule for life as we know it. Thus, the range of frequencies from 1420 to 1720 megahertz is called the waterhole. It has been a popular frequency range for many SETI programs. So basically, the easiest way to send a signal through space is through hydrogen. And the more closer the hydrogen is to actually being water, the better the transmission and reception of the signal. So see, once you learn to connect with yourself, you will naturally realize how you are connected with everything around you. And if you allow yourself to be polluted by emotions, etc., by environment, etc., then you are actually altering your ability to be in tune with the universal frequency. So if you are the pond and you see any version of the stream, ocean, lake, or river, you are not going to enjoy what you see, because you are used to stagnation and death in comparison to the rest of the water being some sort of active version of it with its own level of impurities and imperfections. But at least it's moving. So, to go back to the question. So how does one be the water instead of the forced dam? You have to understand that you already are the water. And the only way to not be forced is to distill, because the force is based on your impurities and imperfections, which normally are just perceptions, not realities. If you are not the fastest person, then your job shouldn't be the runner. It's that simple. Or maybe you're not the fastest person on the football team, but you are heavy and strong, so you can run the ball because it'll be harder for people to tackle you. See, it's always the perfect day. Maybe you can't run a mile because you don't think you can. Maybe you don't know you can run a mile because you never ran from nothing in your life. Your thoughts isn't run. But surprisingly, when the dog's behind you or something, the people that thought they were faster, you wonder why you out in front. See, you don't know what you don't know. So how can one find that space when so many people are literally pushing every button? You got to understand that water becomes the teapot. You're going to take the form of whatever environment you're in, which means you are going to be bonded at some point to everything in existence around you. So the pushing of every button isn't the issue, because if you look at the pond, the lake, the river, the ocean, it's got pressure all around it all the time. There's atmospheric pressure on top of the surface. There's the pressure of its own weight pushing up against whatever banks of the river or the side of the continent, the trenches in the bottom of the ocean, water is always under pressure. So it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be. You're supposed to have your buttons pushed. Because when they push the right buttons, you're connected. When they push the wrong buttons, you're repelled. But if they don't push any button, you're both the pond sitting still in stagnation with no activity. So when you push the right buttons, you have production. And sometimes to get the mass production and the maximum quality, you need to push every button. So, how does one be the water instead of the forced dam? How can one find that space when so many people are literally pushing every button? The answer is simple. You just got to distill. Pasha Pyro, YNet7. Thank you for choosing.